What a wild viewing experience this was. The word wild here means slightly chaotic because there were good and bad moments. For a considerable amount of time, I would sit in front of the TV going, but then there were other times when I would express other emotions to the screen. Unnecessarily, of course, because the people inside the screen are not real. Or are they? Hey, welcome back to Neverland, where the moment has finally come where I get to review Netflix adaptation of A Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. I can't believe the days here. I've been waiting for so long. I should probably say up front that I'm a hardcore fan. Hardcore as in I've written all of my major academic papers on A Series of Unfortunate Events for some reason. And I will say in general that I've really enjoyed myself watching this show, although there were the occasional meh moments. So, reviewing 8 hours of television is quite a lot, I realized. So, you can imagine that this video is going to be a bit longer than my already quite long videos. So what I'll do is I'll kind of separate my video into different parts where I talk about different characteristics of the show, and there I'll have things that maybe I liked and then didn't like so much. And you'll find the different topics in the video description. So the first huge thing that I think the show as well as the book series have got in common is the fact that characters and relationships between them just kind of drive the whole thing. So characters is what I want to concentrate on first. And what I want to say up front is that I absolutely fell head over heels for Violet, Klaus and Sunny. And of course, as a vivid reader of the books, I already loved them. And then there's here with the show, I think, a new layer that the actors have been able to bring to the table with their portrayal. They just seem so warm. The relationship between the characters seems so genuine, and that is hard because I think, especially in A Series of Unfortunate Events, in the original books, you got very vague ideas of characters, but you didn't actually get a lot of what was going on inside of them. And that was very much on purpose, but then that makes it a bit hard to kind of portray that on screen. But I thought they did it so perfectly, and I just absolutely adored these kids. I was also surprised to see that I really enjoyed Neil Patrick Harris as Count Olaf. As opposed to many people, I liked the movie and I liked Jim Carrey's performance as Count Olaf, so that just kept being at the back of my head, and I was like, how is he going to do that? How is he going to be different? Because in the trailers he actually didn't look that different. Also, you know, not just in terms of costume, but also in terms of performance. But he did bring his own kind of human brand to the role, and I will say that the first few episodes I kind of felt like, yeah, this is just Neil Patrick Harris doing his thing, and I like his thing, but it's his thing. But then the more I watched, the more I kind of grew used to his thing and Count Olaf together, and it just kind of worked. And at some point I just didn't really see NPH anymore, but rather just the character of Count Olaf. Lemony Snicket, I mean, I'm really happy that they used him so much here, also as a character, because he's just, his narrative voice is too important in the books to neglect that in the show, and then obviously he kind of is a character in the Baudelaire as well, so you need him. But Patrick Warburton, and that's a very personal opinion, but Patrick Warburton, while he did his job just fine, and he generally worked as what Lemony Snicket is supposed to be, he just wasn't my personal Lemony Snicket. Like, I just imagined him to look different and just kind of act different and not be as self-confident, I think. Then there was one major shocker that I just absolutely did not see coming, and of course I didn't, because I'm one of those viewers who just, or readers who just falls for every trap that a writer sets. But I just could not believe that the parents that we just keep seeing throughout the season were not the Snickets. I just did not see that coming at all. It's so funny because I kept thinking, why would they leave the Snickets alive? It doesn't make any sense for the story. It doesn't help it at all. Where are you going with this? You better have a reason. And then it wasn't the Snickets, and I was just like, Oh my god. Another point in terms of characters and cast that I just have to mention is the obvious diversification of the cast. It wasn't perfect. There were obviously mostly side characters that became people of color, and then it was cool that so many of the Guardians then turned out to be people of color, but you know, they all die, so what does that mean, right? And then the only Guardians that didn't die were white. You know, baby steps, right? It's not perfect yet, but I hope we're getting there soon. So the characters, I'd say, were the main asset of the show. They kind of made you believe the whole thing. Not just them though, but also the sets and effects to a certain extent where they wanted you to believe them. And that's maybe something that I thought was not so consistent. I don't usually discuss sets and effects because that is just not my forte. But when it comes to metafiction, you have to look at a work's constructedness. And that's the case for books as much as it is for series or movies. So with a book, you'll look at the way it's printed, at the fonts, at implicit and explicit meta elements, at the words. It's just a different medium. Whereas with a different medium, like shows, like a TV show or a movie, there come different modes that you have to analyze. So settings and effects, I thought, were a huge part of that here. Obviously the sets were really good. They seemed constructed, yes, but that was the whole point. You could see that it wasn't real trees, that it wasn't a real sky, that the colors were sometimes too gloomy or too bright, but it was supposed to be that way, and it looked amazing because it looked artificial. But there was a point, despite their being able to make aware of this constructedness, where I wasn't sure if they hit a home run. Metafictional stories are supposed to make aware of their constructedness. The books did that in all different kinds of ways, and the show did it sometimes explicitly by, you know, having Neil Patrick Harris' break character look into the camera and be like, streaming services are the best, but sometimes implicitly, for example, by using effects and sets. So yes, the show did that, but I would say not consistently enough. To give one good example, I would have a look at Sunny and the way that she acted. Obviously, sometimes that happens in the very beginning where Sunny gets to carve a stone out of a rock with her teeth. And obviously, we understand as viewers that this is really hard. So, for a baby, obviously. So how are they going to do this? They could do this very realistically and make us believe she actually did that. Or, and this is obviously something that comes with metafiction, they make us aware of the fact that they had to fake this. So what did they do? They showed Sunny from behind, from like a weird angle, and had all kinds of bits and pieces of stones fly around her to emulate this effect. And that worked, and that was cool. But then there were other scenes where Sunny did something that, you know, she could not have done usually, where they did use a CGI baby, and it looked good enough for us to have to believe that this is real. So the question is, what happens to the constructed moment then, if this other constructed moment is so good that that they want us to believe that it's real? It's difficult because obviously you have to strike a balance between the two of them, but really also they cancel each other out. They cancel each other's effects out. And I thought that was not really well done just yet. So these are issues that change from medium to medium, and I think in the case of a TV show for a streaming service, there's obviously different things that you have to consider as opposed to a book series. Especially in this case where literally everything that happens is 100% dependent on the way that Lemony Snicket presents it, the way that he's done his research, the way that he comments on it, the way that he wants us to view things, his writing style, his metaphors, everything he does absolutely coins the way that we consume the story. But what does that leave us with when it comes to a TV show? Because a TV show, yes, can apparently introduce a narrator and have him tell us parts of the story aloud, but not all the time. There's camera movement, there's lighting, there's editing. There's so many people working on this other than with a book, and it's just a lot harder to do this with a TV show. So the question is, were they successful? Yes, partly, but things changed considerably still. For example, they had to make things just a lot more obvious. Lemony Snicket in the book series would just drop hints here and there in side sentences. You can go back all the time and just read them 10 times, so you can have little post-it notes and just kind of try and solve the puzzle if you'd like. A word does not necessarily have more meaning than another word. It really depends on who is reading it. And up to a certain extent that is true with a TV series, but a TV series can put something in the very, very background or in the foreground, and it completely changes the importance of the meaning. And that's just not that great in books. So they just had to make things more obvious in the TV show in terms of what the general mystery is. And the general mystery is hardly even, apparent in the first 4 books. But here it is, and I feel like that just kind of took away a bit of the mystery and also a bit of the sophistication in a way. Ultimately, while I think they made it work as much as they could and it was fine, and I liked at times that it was more obvious as a viewer, I still think that the story was tailor-made for the medium of the children's novel. Tailor-made, and you can adapt it, and they tried hard, and they've done a quite good job, but it was still, if there was ever a narrative that was supposed to be told through books, it was that one. One issue that I had, especially during the first 2 episodes, was the fact that, and this just had to come up, but was the fact that it was so similar to the movie. And I'm one of the few people, I think, who absolutely adore the movie. From 2004 with Jim Carrey and Meryl Streep and all kinds of crazy important people. And interestingly, of course, the movie had a large part of the creative team of the movie also now worked on the show. So it was both were passion projects for specific people. Down to the dialogue, certain elements that did not exist in the books but did now in the movies and in the show, like the telescope, having a look at the critics, a lot of whom hated the movie but now adore the show. It just makes me wonder, why? Were we just not ready for that kind of story at that point? Was it too gloomy for us back then? Were the postmodern elements too much? It could have also been the way that we approach adaptations of franchises. I mean, back then we had mostly Potter and Lord of the Rings, and they were big, but other than that, that wasn't just such a huge thing. Yeah, it's just interesting that now I feel like the show is flooded by positive reviews from all kinds of sides, whereas the movie just wasn't. It's interesting. One thing that was obviously different between movie and the TV show was the fact that the movie had about 100 minutes to tell the story of 3 books, whereas the show had 8 hours to tell the story of 4 books, which is insane. Was that good that it had so much time? I don't know. I think it wasn't. I think it messed with pacing, and that, by the way, was where I went. Because it just, at times it was just really slow. I was like, okay, can we get on with the story? And obviously, the immediate fan reaction to something like this is like, no, we need more time to explore everything. And I get that. I'm a Harry Potter fan, believe me, I get that. But, I'm not sure that was so much the case here. Yes, we have a lot of characters and storylines in the books, but we never really dig deep there either. We get a lot of vague hints, and if the show had decided to dig deeper with these things, it would have been completely fine, but it didn't. It tried to stay as vague as it could, which is, of course they did, because that's the charm of the books, but it just, made 2 hours seem really long at times, and that's sad with such a great story. It doesn't have to seem long. So I'm wondering if 1.5 hours would have been enough to tell the story of one relatively short children's book. So yeah, that was like a survey of all the different characteristics and including as many things as I could for all episodes. If you have any specific questions, you can obviously always ask me. But all in all, I would say that I really like the show, and I can't believe that I'm already done watching because I grew so close with the characters especially. And yes, there were things that obviously were not perfect, but ultimately, again, just there was a lot of warmth weirdly coming from it, despite the fact that it is such a gloomy and negative show, that it just kind of got me hooked and I want more. Please let me know in the comments how you liked it. What did you like? What didn't you like? Please let me know. As always, you can like the video if you liked it. You can subscribe if you want to see more of me and children's entertainment. You can follow me on Twitter or on Tumblr for regular updates on my videos and children's media in general. And thank you so much for watching. Bye!